The Galactic Union had conquered 1,000 worlds. From acid-slick deserts to cities wrapped in nanite veils, their campaigns marched on without pause, without resistance worth remembering. Their soldiers were bred for precision, raised on the belief that technology would overcome every obstacle. When Earth was catalogued, a Class 4 undeveloped biosphere with outdated infrastructure and massive, uncontrolled jungle regions, it was written off as a curiosity. At best, a training exercise. At worst, a primitive wildlife preserve. Their briefings were filled with statistics. 70% forest density in some equatorial zones. Atmospheric unpredictability. Biological noise that overwhelmed scanners. Nothing threatening. Nothing serious. Just another untamed ball of green and water, orbiting a sun too young to matter. General Talvok, commander of the Union's 7th Recon Battalion, laughed during the review. They train in this chaos? They wage war through plants. His subordinates joined in, displaying digital projections of Earth's most remote jungles. Moisture clung to every leaf, vines strangled ruins, and insect swarms fogged the air. They call these special forces, another officer chuckled, pointing at grainy footage of camouflage humans slipping through underbrush. Like ghosts in a forest. To them, it was a joke, a species too stubborn to automate. They called Earth's jungles a relic, impractical, inefficient, and brutal. Why rely on terrain when one could control orbit? Why move on foot when flight was instantaneous? Yet Earth stood, unaffiliated, unclaimed, and silent. The Union couldn't resist the chance to prove its superiority, if not to take the planet, then to discredit the mythos, to remind the galaxy that Earth was backward and irrelevant. The operation was named Verdant Reclamation. Talvok assembled a task force of veterans. No rookies, no unknown variables, just elite operators, drones, scouts, fire teams, and AI-backed command. The insertion would be surgical. One jungle basin near the equator. A week of observation, mock skirmishes, and then extraction. Proof that the wilderness held no challenge for enlightened war doctrine. The Union ships breached orbit without resistance. They were not even greeted. No satellites tracked them. No defenses activated. The land lay untouched beneath them, coiling with life. Scanners reported staggering biomass. Noise levels were off the charts. Data fragments blinked out before they could be recorded. Interference, it was assumed. The jungle breathed like a living organism, and their instruments coughed on its spores. Drop teams deployed with precision. Pods split open against soft earth, metal legs crunching into thick root systems. Soldiers in exo-armors stepped forward with disciplined synchronization. Drone swarms hummed into the canopy, casting webs of light and scanning grids across kilometers. The jungle answered with nothing, just rustling leaves, distant animal calls, a stillness that pretended to be calm. For hours, the Union logged data, mapped terrain, and took samples. They moved deeper, confident. They pushed through ferns and fog with sterilizing fields and energy blades. Trees burned where they stood. Vines were severed before they clung. They met no resistance, until they did. At first, it was a drone, static on a live feed. Then another, lost from the grid entirely. Comms flickered. GPS warped. Signal towers erected for triangulation reported sudden feedback, like echoes from nowhere. Union soldiers chalked it up to environment. They adjusted parameters. They cleared ground. But the jungle reknit itself overnight. Vines regrew. Moss swallowed footprints. Even fire left no scars. Nothing stayed burned. Nothing stayed mapped. The next loss wasn't a machine. It was Private Kroll. His bio sign vanished mid-patrol. No sound. No alert. Only silence. His partner swore he had been just behind her. One moment breathing, the next gone. No struggle. No signs of retreat or attack. His transponder blinked from a dozen meters away, embedded in a rotting tree trunk. The Union labeled it a malfunction, a freak event. But beneath the surface, fear crept. Talvok dismissed concerns. Keep formation. Increase coverage. This planet is a test of discipline, nothing more. But discipline cracked when soldiers began whispering at night, about shapes moving without sound, about figures watching from above, blending with branches, always still, always there. The jungle didn't just resist. It responded. Each maneuver was mirrored, each step echoed by something unseen. The Union sent out more drones, more teams, more signals, and the jungle swallowed them with the same indifference. They had come to mock, to demonstrate the inferiority of untamed terrain and unsophisticated warfare. But now, inside this living maze, every assumption began to rot like wood in wet soil. The 7th Battalion, undefeated across 50 worlds, stood ankle-deep in mud and doubt, unaware that they had already entered the arena of something far older, far crueler, and far more human than they could understand. The disappearance of Kroll was the first crack. The second was the silence that followed every loss. One by one, patrols failed to check in. Equipment stopped responding. Autonomous drones hovered in place, power drained or guidance lost, frozen like insects trapped in amber. Technicians couldn't explain it. Commanders blamed sabotage, even as no enemy had yet been seen. Whatever was out there, it never attacked directly. It simply watched, waited, and then removed. By the third day, soldiers refused to split into pairs. No one wanted to be alone. No one trusted the trees. Branches swayed without wind. Shapes shifted behind a mist. Cameras captured movement that vanished when played back. Some thought it was psychological warfare, hallucinations caused by spores, pheromones, the oppressive green. But the data didn't lie. Biosigns were vanishing without pattern or trace. The jungle didn't kill them. It took them. The Union increased pressure. High-altitude scans. Infrared sweeps. Control burns. They tried to clear sections to get eyes on the terrain. But the cleared areas regrew. Vines thickened overnight. Trees that had been leveled stood again by dawn. Engineers who laid down sensor beacons found them uprooted, crushed under fallen logs. Some began to question whether it was sabotage from within. Panic bred suspicion. Blame shifted. Rank meant less when answers vanished with the light. Then they found one of their own, barely alive. Sergeant Kelv, part of a recon unit, stumbled back into camp drenched in blood and shaking. His armor was torn in dozens of places, but there were no burn marks, no plasma scarring, just precision slashes, as if made by tools meant for silence. He spoke only 2 words before falling unconscious. "They're here." He didn't mean the jungle. He didn't mean animals. Autopsy reports on a recovered body told the real story. Wounds made by blades, not claws. Deep cuts at tendon points. A kill method consistent with advanced hand-to-hand combat. Every joint targeted. Every artery cut with deliberate restraint, like a message. The enemy wasn't random. It wasn't the jungle. It was human. But the Union refused to believe. Earth was supposed to be outdated. Inferior. The humans they had studied did not have orbital dominance, nor interstellar engines. They were fractured, scattered, insignificant. Yet now, elite Union soldiers were being eliminated by forces that left no digital trace, used no energy weapons, and moved without sound. They were seeing warfare stripped down to its most lethal form. Not lasers, but discipline. Not algorithms, but instinct. The jungle had become a second skin to the attackers, and that skin swallowed everything. The term ghosts returned, no longer in jest. Soldiers whispered of men draped in leaves and bark, eyes hidden behind netting, moving like fog across the ground. One swore he saw a human rise out of the swamp water and drag a Union officer under, vanishing in seconds. It was denied in the official report. They tried capturing one. They laid traps, set baits. No one came. Instead, the bait teams vanished. All 3. Their gear returned in neat piles beside the camp perimeter the next morning. Their helmets faced inward. Command moved into lockdown. Orders went out to retreat to orbital pickup points, but those who tried didn't arrive. Drop ships reported confusion in beacon signals. Landing pads found themselves blocked by freshly fallen trees, landslides, or total radio failure. There were no attacks, Just interruptions. Everything broke apart. In the command tent, Talvok watched the map of his operation flicker red with missing units. Dozens gone. Hundreds unaccounted for. His voice, once calm and commanding, now trembled with disbelief. The more they pushed, the more the jungle absorbed. There was no battle line, no enemy formation, no technological war, only silence and the knowledge that they were being studied in return. Then the recordings surfaced, not from their own network, but dropped into their systems overnight. Helmet cam footage from missing soldiers, replayed with eerie clarity, a slow pan of the forest, a flicker of movement, then static. Another clip, the same location, different soldier, cut off mid-sentence by a whisper in a language unknown to any Union database. A final clip, night vision capturing a dozen eyes watching from the canopy above, unmoving, waiting. It wasn't just combat. It was performance, a demonstration of control, of dominance. By the end of the fourth day, the jungle had taken half the force. No direct battles, no prolonged engagements. The Union, superior in every measurable field, found itself paralyzed, disoriented, and outmaneuvered. Their technology failed. Their courage buckled. And above them, unseen and patient, the real force behind Earth's defense waited. Not machines, not monsters, but something far worse. Humans trained to disappear. The man known only as Rook sat with his back against a tree, heartbeat in rhythm with the night sounds. He didn't need light. He didn't need words. He had been here for 12 days. Long enough to learn the invaders' patterns. Long enough to understand their mistakes. Every footstep they took, every drone they launched, spoke the same truth. They didn't belong here. Ghostvine's unit had no official records. No medals. No memorials. Their history was carved into bark and passed by whisper. They weren't built in labs or trained in simulations. They were forged in storms, in heat, in silence. Their weapons were simple, their tactics ancient. And their mission was clear: make arrogance bleed. Rook recalled his grandfather's story, the one about how empires fall, not from defeat, but from disbelief. They never believe they can lose to someone who crawls through the mud, he'd said. That memory was sharper than any blade. The Union soldiers didn't know it, but they were already ghosts. They just hadn't stopped breathing yet. Across the region, small units worked without comms, without orders. They didn't need them. The terrain gave direction. Every snapped twig, every disturbed patch of moss, every unnatural silence. It all spoke. Jungle warfare wasn't chaos. It was order so deep it appeared random. The Union failed to understand that. They thought structure meant command. They thought power came from systems. But in this war, the system was Earth. There were no mistakes. Every trap laid, every misdirection planted, followed principles taught through pain. Ghostvines weren't operating for revenge or glory. They moved for balance. This was their theater. The invaders had insulted the stage, and Earth had a long memory for that kind of disrespect. Some of them were second-generation fighters, children of old wars, raised on legacy. Some were former rangers, others volunteers who had left the cities long ago, tired of being told what humanity should become. Out here, they became what they always were: predators. Not by hate, but by purpose. The Union underestimated the human mind more than the terrain. That was their true failure. A machine sees what is. A human remembers what was, imagines what could be, and weaponizes both. Rook remembered the first time he saw orbital drops tear through sky. He didn't panic. He smiled. It meant they brought more toys to lose. They tracked Union movements without sensors. Just breath, distance, intuition. They let some units go, just to watch where they returned. The jungle became a net. Every path twisted back to nothing. GPS was poison here. Directions betrayed those who relied on them. Ghost vines left no bodies, only traces. Footprints that led nowhere. Blood that wasn't fresh enough to follow. They didn't just fight. They studied, learned alien patterns, movement rhythms, response times. They tested limits. A flare here, a noise there. Measure the reaction. Map fear. When one soldier was cornered by a patrol, he didn't run. He waited. let them approach, then vanished between breath and blink. It wasn't magic. It was years of training that turned stillness into a weapon. The alien squad left in formation. Only 3 made it back. None could describe what happened. They remembered flashes, whispers, and the moment they realized they were being herded. Messages were left, carved into trees in languages the Union didn't recognize. Ancient dialects, regional scripts, dead languages. Not for communication, but for confusion. Each message a mirror to the invaders' ignorance. You don't belong here. In their camp, Union officers tried to apply logic, counterinsurgency protocols, sweep tactics, but there was no insurgency. Only consequences. The jungle wasn't being defended. It was avenging. Rook and his unit didn't feel pride. They felt duty. Earth had given them the tools. It was their job to prove they were still sharp. The greatest weapon wasn't their rifles or traps. It was the invaders' disbelief. They thought humans were scattered tribes clinging to an old world. They didn't see the unity in silence, the coordination in chaos. The stories that shaped these soldiers were born of real pain. Not myths, not propaganda. Stories of holding the line with no supplies. Stories of crawling through hell with a knife and a reason. The Union had data. Humans had memory, and memory struck deeper. Every death delivered was a message. Every spared patrol was a warning. Ghost vines didn't fight for domination. They fought to remind. And in that jungle, the Union was starting to remember what fear felt like. Because now, they weren't facing resistance. They were facing consequences. By the 7th day, the 7th Recon Battalion was no longer operational. Of the original 312 deployed personnel, only 91 remained accounted for, and that number dropped every hour. Communications were fragmentary. Navigation systems cycled uselessly through corrupted maps. Automated systems refused to obey or spiraled into failure loops. AI support had been cut off after unknown signal interference penetrated its encrypted decision layers. Command had collapsed. Talvok no longer issued orders. He listened, waited, and hoped. The Union didn't know how to retreat from a place that refused to acknowledge their presence. Every direction, they moved and brought them back to the same hollow tree, the same broken drone pile, the same empty clearing. Their dead didn't rot. They vanished. Personal logs, when recovered, were filled with confusion, fear, and quiet acceptance. These weren't the writings of warriors. These were the final thoughts of those who realized they were prey. Then came the broadcasts. Earth origin signals, tight-beamed directly into Union helmets, bypassing encryption entirely. Calm voices, precise, untraceable, devoid of emotion. You were warned. Not in words. In history. This place does not negotiate. Leave your dead. Run if you can. The messages didn't repeat. They evolved. Each one more personal. Each one referencing past war crimes, colonial atrocities, technological arrogance. It became clear the jungle wasn't just strategy. It was memory weaponized. Union specialists tried to trace the origin. They failed. One tried to jam the frequency. He went silent mid-task. Last words drowned under static and his own scream. No one followed up. What remained of the command team begged for extraction. Orbit refused. Too much interference. Too much uncertainty. The pickup zone had been sabotaged, equipment stripped, landing pads mined with primitive but effective explosives. Union doctrine had no contingency for an enemy that could predict their choices before they made them. Some soldiers broke discipline. They ran. Alone, in groups, in any direction. None were seen again. No bodies. Just silence. The jungle offered no forgiveness, only lessons. And the Union had failed every test. But this wasn't revenge. The humans didn't chase them, didn't taunt or humiliate. They waited, patient, watching the Union implode under its own weight. Their approach was not chaos, it was restraint, precision violence, applied only where necessary. Everything else was surrender to environment. The jungle did more than humans ever needed to. Nature was the blade. Ghost vines just pointed it. Eventually, Orbit declared the mission scrubbed. A black mark, sealed record. Earth was reclassified as a red zone, uninhabitable due to bioweapon instability. That term was chosen to avoid embarrassment. No mention of the operation ever made it into public logs. Officially, the Union had never set foot there. The remaining survivors were quarantined, deemed unstable, not because of infection, but because of what they claimed, that they had never seen their attackers clearly, only flashes of movement, and the overwhelming certainty that they were never alone. That they had been allowed to live only because someone, somewhere, wanted their story to be told. One survivor, a medic, kept whispering a single phrase, "We were the trespassers." And they were. Weeks later, in the heart of that same jungle, Rook and his team dismantled the last of the Union's buried tech. Scorched ground healed behind them. No trophies were taken. No signals sent. Their job was done. They left behind no monuments, only a story. One that would spread in whispers among the stars. A warning wrapped in silence. That Earth is not conquered. It is endured. And for those who dare mock its wildness, there are still those who remember how to vanish, how to strike, and how to let the land speak louder than any army.